Doctors of Reddit, what happened when you diagnosed a COVID-19 denier with COVID-19? They just kept denying they had it, stated they had something else, and tried to leave against medical advice while on high-flow nasal cannula, which we didn't let him do because he would have died within minutes. Before he was admitted to the hospital, he was symptomatic but refused to isolate at home. He gave it to his wife, who ended up in the ICU. I just don't understand what these people get out of saying it's something else. If it's something else, wouldn't that mean they believe there's something terrible out there anyway? IDK, it's stupid. I don't get it. Because that would mean that they were wrong. According to YouTube statistics, 100% of people watching this video are actually not subscribed. Please subscribe. It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. Pretty please. I'm an ODP and work alongside anesthetists in theaters in ICU. To be honest, I've not really seen anything from patients regarding outright denial. However, I have seen some of my friends on Facebook who have spouted all sorts of lies. That's really disappointing to say the least. One of them, a friend of my wife, works at the hospital. She works in admin and refuses to wear a mask and even bought some certificate off the net so she doesn't have to wear one in public. Anyway, that's being escalated up the chain of disciplinary action. If you have such a bad respiratory issue that you can't wear a mask, then maybe you should stay home. I swear these people pissed me off so bad. I hope she gets appropriate punishment for her refusal. Absolutely, there is nothing at all wrong with her physically, she just doesn't believe in COVID. And this is someone who works in a hospital. Plain weird. Family members have come in with a sick family member and lied about exposure and or symptoms, despite a member's testing positive. This can lead to inappropriate management, delay in treatment, and exposure of staff and other families. The family members then get angry when told to isolate. Reading some of these stories are wild. Even at the brink of death, people still refuse that COVID is real or that they have it. They would rather believe anything else, almost to a point that I feel a doctor could tell them they are dying of AIDS or some made-up disease and they go, "Oh, see, I knew it wasn't COVID." Sir, you're dying from a brain cloud. The only way to cure it is to jump into a volcano. I knew it. Not a doctor but an EMT. Said patient had already been diagnosed and was being transferred to a different hospital. During the trip he kept insisting he wasn't sick, and at one point even tried to rip off my respirator. So yeah, fun times. As an anesthesiologist, by the time someone's calling for us, it's for intubation and the patient is in no condition to deny anything. Honestly, it's usually the family that's the issue and that needs to be escorted from the room. That boggles my mind. By that point they can see that their loved one is having trouble breathing, and they're still trying to keep them from being treated. Denial can be unbelievably powerful. If their worldview requires believing that COVID is a hoax, then some would rather die than admit their view of reality is a lie. My worst experience was when a 2-year-old kid got diagnosed with COVID. His mother had brought him with carib fever and diarrhea. The child was severely dehydrated, and so we had to do a mandatory swab test since we planned to admit him. It came positive and the mother refused to admit it. We were ready to perform the repeat test and we even advised for the parents to get tested. Her defense was the child never left the house. It's just I and the father who go to work daily. The grandmother babysits while we are away. How can he even get COVID without leaving the house? She had called her husband. He came with 10-15 relatives in a car. They broke a few chairs and then left with the baby. We just informed about the case to the COVID control center. A family full of clowns? That's the only explanation I can come up with. Fun fact, clowns actually have a code of ethics, apparently. It's called the 8 Commandments. Not a doctor, but when my grandmother was dying, my relatives kept pushing me and the doctors to say what it really was. It added so much stress to an already difficult situation and was embarrassing as well. Even after she died, they kept saying things like, "What if it was a stroke and she was misdiagnosed?" Don't you think they just didn't want to help her? I was trying to arrange with hospice to go in and say goodbye, and my stupid second cousin was sending me YouTube videos about how COVID is fake. I was already not close with these people and I am glad they are out of my life now. People apparently take YouTube and social media very seriously, don't they? I'm a student. Funeral director and I see families go to the funeral of someone who died of COVID-19 and still deny it. They started out shrieking at the doctors to change the cause of death on the death certificate. Now FEMA is helping with funeral expenses for COVID deaths. Suddenly there's changes of heart. Physician here. The willful cognitive dissonance is real. It never ceases to amaze me how many patients will refuse assistance from me to register to get vaccinated, make claims that vaccines are harmful, but then accept my medical care on anything else that suits their whim. Patients absolutely have autonomy to refuse care, but why would you continue to see a physician and accept their medical advice and care if you think they would simultaneously recommend something to you that would be harmful? I've posed this question to patients who are vaccine hesitant. Why would you let me manage your diabetes and hypertension if you think I would harm you by recommending vaccinations? You cannot get any kind of thoughtful response aside from, I just don't want to be vaccinated. Didn't diagnose a denier, so not exactly this, but did have a patient refuse testing upon admission and aggressively yelling COVID is a hoax. I calmly said okay. Nurse, since we won't know his status, please admit him to the COVID floor. He became a believer in an instant and requested to be tested. Edit, for those getting their pants into a twist over this. I work in a major city in the USA, and across our health system hospitals, we do our level best to not admit an untested patient to tested negative floor. Such patients, exposed refusing, are marked PUI, patient under investigation, and are admitted to another floor, with other PUIs. This floor also houses non-IQ tested COVID plus patients. All patients are kept separate from each other still, in private rooms. Hopefully this makes better sense and ensures that the general public doesn't think we are placing all patients into a petri dish of coronavirus. Edit 2, source, since this seems to not be obvious, and the story is unbelievable, am a physician, trauma surgeon, surgical critical care intensivist, and director of a surgical ICU that also functions as a COVID ICU during case spikes. I work on a COVID unit and I ran into a patient like this. They'd tell me over and over again about how they weren't really sick and about how I didn't need to be gowned up in PPE. They even tried to take my face shield off. If you test positive for COVID 2 times then you have COVID? People are crazy. That is beyond crazy emo. Be nuts all to yourself, don't fucking touch others you psycho.